So today we have a really special guest with us. We have Callie King. So Callie King, she's operating a boarding and training facility in Chester County, Pennsylvania, where she works with horses and riders of all levels. She specializes in taking a science-based approach in both teaching and training. So this includes a holistic approach to riding, considering the health and soundness of the horse, the suitability of the saddle and the tack, and the individuality of each horse and rider. So Callie also creates a positive learning environment for students and horses. And so we're always looking for a way of incorporating fun and the newest information and research on psychology, behavior, and her teaching and learning. So we have Callie today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just talking about our subject of keeping the animal athlete first and the sport second, and just how you do that at your facility. When you go to your facility and you work with all different levels of riding, I imagine there's different approaches to each situation. But yeah, so for example, when you have just a beginner rider, what would you do to just create a good bond with the horse, with a new rider?
The first thing that I try to do is help the help the person become really aware of the horse. So even as we're going out in the field and I'm first, they're getting to meet their horse, they're bringing their horse in, we're doing just the simple things like how do you handle a halter and lead rope or handle tacking up. I like to really point out the small things of what the horse is doing. Start to notice the little body language things, the amount of tension the horse is carrying, things like around their eyes, their nose, just some of those subtle pieces. So as the person starts to get more tuned into what the horse is feeling, I think that's the first step to being able to build more of a bond or a connection as time goes on.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good tip too. So just starting out, you just want to get the small details of that individual horse and seeing how they react to things. Is that what you're pretty much saying there?
Yeah. Even the simple things like when we go to put the halter on, I ask them notice well, did he put his nose in the halter or did he take his head away from the halter? Did you notice how there he kind of squinted and closed his eyes when you pulled it over his ears, because he was a little uncomfortable? Just those sometimes subtle things that isn't the horse even pulling away or walking away or doing something big, but just the little subtle pieces that help people become more aware of the horse.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just stepping it up when, let's just say it's a relationship, this person has known this horse for a long time, and and they're just wanting to go to the next level on their competition. Would you say, how would you go about just going to the next level? You would say and just the trust level. I mean, would that be something that you need to look into for moving up in athletics?
Yeah, I do feel that it is. I think that with our work with horses, and this is probably true for any animal athlete, but it's this combination of building the relationship with the animal that includes trust, includes kind of mutual awareness and attunement, and how well we get to know each other, how well we kind of can read our horse. But then it's also skills. So it depends on the individual. When I'm working with different clients or even working with my own horses, which I feel I need to focus on more with that individual, or even sometimes it comes down to the day. So if I feel like we've got a good connection, then we can really just dive in and focus on specific skills. Where if I feel like the connection just isn't there, or they're struggling with focus, or struggling with just sometimes those off days, then I'll tend to focus more on that, which I would call the relationship piece, or some of the kind of mental skill building, even for the horse, which can include maintaining focus for longer on the task and stuff, and that will be more what I'm paying attention to rather than the skills. So the short answer to the question would be it depends on the horse rider pair, and also depends on the day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So just even going back on just for you, so did you live in Colorado for a while in the past?
I did. So I used to spend all of my summers out there as a kid. So I
Oh,
never lived there full time, but I spent a lot of time in Colorado.
yeah. And isn't that like where you got your first horse out
Yeah,
there? Yeah.
yes, it was. Yeah, I was 9, and it was some friends of my parents that we had actually just met, an old rancher, gave me Scotch, who was 32 at the time. And he actually lived to 37, and I rode him for 3 or 4 years. So he was an amazing horse.
Good. Yeah, a good horse to you beginning for you, like learning how to ride a horse.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's great. So just from there, you just got, that was your passion and you just kept going with it, sounds like.
Yeah, I did. I had ridden some before Scotch, just kind of basic lessons.
Mhm.
And then most of my real learning was just riding him on my own. Like I would just go out with him all afternoon. And and then I started taking more like formal lessons a few years later, and got into doing some showing, did a lot of the jumpers, did some of the hunter shows, and yeah, just kept riding ever since then. I had a number of different jobs at barns where I would help to start horses as a teenager. Worked for a veterinarian, worked in tack shops, worked at some racing barns. So really got to experience a lot of different areas of the industry. Um, and then after I went to school that I started really doing it professionally. That I opened my barn as a business, and um, have been training as a business and professionally for over 10 years now.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really good. So where did you go to school? You said after it was after college you decided to go out and
Yeah,
venture.
I went to school at Penn State.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense why you just stayed out there then.
Yes. Yeah. So I
Oh,
went for agricultural business just for an associate's degree. So I wasn't away from my horses for too long. And it also was nice because I can't say that I used that much directly from my education, but I made a lot of really good contacts,
yeah.
um, and definitely just even being out there, the experience of riding and how they manage so many horses at the breeding stable there at the college was a good experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always nice to see just what else is out there from other, yeah, other states and how they do things. And it's amazing how much it does just change throughout even the United States from the West Coast to the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast right now, but I went to Colorado State. Yeah, so that's just a difference in from the East Coast. So that's really
Yes,
cool. Yeah. So you were on the racetrack too, then it sounds like.
I
For,
did. I worked in for a harness racing barn for probably about 6 months.
Mhm.
Uh, so I did. I was just kind of a groom, barn hand, did morning chores, helped prepare horses for the training, went to the track a lot of nights and weekends, and
Yeah.
helped there. So that was definitely again an experience and really seeing something that was a very different part of the industry than I had been
Right.
exposed to before.
Yeah, I know in Kentucky in particular, it's all about tradition and doing things like certain ways. So
Mhm.
I'm curious, Pennsylvania, is it similar to where it's a lot of tradition? Because I haven't been on the racetracks in Pennsylvania, but
Yeah, I would say so. It was a lot of tradition, um, in that things were kind of done the way that they were done without necessarily a lot of thought for change or what else could be possible. Um, I know that there are definitely racing barns out there that do things differently. I have to say that the one that I was at wasn't the best experience in that the horses were very stressed,
mhm.
um, and it tended to have a lot. We had a lot of breakdowns and just emotionally the working with the horses was difficult. Like they had a lot of behaviors that they would pin you in the stalls, they would bite, they would kick, but it was all of a result of the stress of what they were having to do each day.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking back, I mean, it's kind of like moments like that where it's like looking back, like how can you help those horses in that situation? Like
Mm-hmm.
how can you help them with the stress? Like, do you have any ideas of like how they could have done it differently on like for just keeping it, yeah, like just helping them overcome that?
Yeah, I do because I have a client that also has harness racers. So it's really interesting to talk to her and to hear how she does things so differently than what I had been used to at the barn that I was working at. So I think the biggest thing is she provides her horses with a lot more turnout than, you know, the horses that I have been working with were in stalls most of the time when they weren't on the track. So she gives her horses a lot more turnout, so the management is even different. And then when she's working with them, all of the daily tasks, from putting on the harness to you know, hitching to the stalkie to going in the wash stall afterwards, she's really good at, she takes the tasks slow so that the horse is comfortable with each piece instead of just managing them to get it done.
Yeah.
And I think that that makes a huge difference for the horses.
Some patience.
Yes.
Have some patience with them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great tip too. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, just hearing from that, like I was in Kentucky and seeing the race stuff and like the breeding and it's different. It's a different approach. And so it's just kind of nice to hear from someone like you, like, you know, that there's ways to avoiding all the stress. So that's a good tip too. So
yeah, I think sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge in the industry of where a particular sport like racing it gets a really bad reputation just as a whole. And I think if we can remember that it's not necessarily the sport itself that is bad or terrible for the horses, it's just the way that it's gone about, you know, and if we can look for ways to just do better by the horse without necessarily giving up the whole sport, you know, I think there can be a middle ground.
Right, absolutely. It's just being open to different approaches besides just maybe tradition. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what at least I saw that out there. It's like, this could be done differently, you know, and it would have been easy. So, yeah. And so, okay, for example, just a regular performance horse that's in an arena and things like that. What would you recommend, just kind of a side note here, what would you recommend, like if you're on a budget and you want to have your horse go to the next level in competition but you're on a budget, what would you recommend in like investing in to help them get to the next level? Would it be like footing or, you know, their saddles or something that helps them achieve your goal of competing? Is there anything in particular?
I would say education, because I think that the education is always the best investment, and it can then help to make the decisions about all of the other things. You know, for example, you mentioned the saddle, and that is certainly a really important part. Like the equipment is always so important, but I think investing first in the education is more important than just, say, getting a saddle rep out from a brand that you've heard good things about and being willing to spend a lot. You know, it's if you come in with getting at least a baseline education to recognize who a good expert is in whatever field you're looking for, whether it's going to be a saddle fitter, whether it's going to be another trainer, whether it's going to be someone that is, you know, doing body work on the horse or doing more even, you know, medical things if there's something that needs diagnosed. When you can invest in the education first, that you can really recognize that expert, you know, kind of pick the really good people for your team to help support you and your horse and your goals. I think that's the most important piece.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that's a great takeaway there too. And just, surrounding yourself with people who you do know and you trust. And yeah, education. I think that's definitely something people should look into. That's a good tip. So just on the topic of keeping your animal first too, why do you know, just because you've seen a lot out there in the industry, like, do you think that a lot of people do have their animals first when they're competing, or is it more for the money? You know, why do people compete nowadays? I mean, as a whole, it's kind of hard to say, but I mean, do you see that in the field where it's switching to more for the sport than for the horse?
Well, I guess I can't speak to the industry as a whole. I can just speak to kind of what I've experienced. And most of the demographic that I work with is people getting into riding, especially people that are either returning to riding or getting into riding middle age, you know, where they finally have the resources, the time to be able to dedicate to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in some ways that can be a very different demographic than necessarily younger people that are riding, or kids that are getting started, or people that are doing it professionally. So in the demographic that I work with, I find that people are really focused on the relationship with the horse, wanting to ride for not only the connection, but also the personal challenge of it. And then competing becomes an extension of that. You know, it's more about the personal challenge of, can I do this? Can I go out in front of people in a new skill? So with that in mind, I find that then the horse really is kept at the front, you know, because it's just as important to them to have that good relationship and that good connection with their horse, and to feel like their horse is also able to, at least to a point, enjoy perhaps what they're doing, or at least to have that sense that the horse is maybe enjoying it, rather than just going for the win.
Yeah.
And you know what, at least I know there are varying opinions on how accurate sometimes statistics are, but the statistics that I've seen as far as like recent surveys, that demographic of people getting into riding, and especially women getting into riding later in life, is one of the largest growing, and will probably soon be one of the largest demographics that's in the horse industry. So I think that that has some really positive trends for the horse.
Good. Yeah. And that's always great to hear. Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's different demographics, but on the level you're at, it's good you see that the horse is first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's always good to hear. Of course.
Yeah, and I know there's other areas where it is different, and at higher levels of competition, it can be very different. You know, there's certainly many times where the horse is not put first, but I think it is encouraging when there's a large group that is coming in with a different focus. It can be a catalyst for change.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see a good positive change in the industry, you think, on just the amount of people who are getting involved in the industry?
I hope so, yeah, because as you know, eventually it does kind of come down to dollars in a way, but when there's a bigger demographic involved in sport, in industry, that their focus is more on the horse and the connection between horse and person, you know, just from a kind of an economic sense, I think that can drive change.
Right. And so this is a kind of a question. I was curious too. Just personally, I'm just thinking of like, so horses have the conformation, they're built for certain things, like cutting horses are going to be more under themselves versus racing horses are going to be more long for a nice stride. What if a horse, like just from your experience too, like they're not really built for the job that they're going for, but they love their job, you know, but you have a different goal of maybe going to a higher level. Like, how would you, like, it's your horse, how would you go about just making a good transition with the horse for both of you, you know, for your client?
Yeah, that can definitely be tough, but I usually try to counsel the people that I work with that, you know, it is okay to part ways with the horse, you know, and when your goals, whether it is even just from a skill or a safety level sometimes, or if it really is from a, you know, competitive level of needing a different type of horse, a horse with a higher level of athleticism to do what you want, you know, it is okay to part ways, because financially it can be very difficult to actually manage two different horses. And even if financially it's possible, even from the time commitment and allowing that other horse to potentially have another, you know, a relationship with another person, like
right.
I really do try to counsel people that it's okay to part ways. You know, take your time in finding your current horse or your previous horse a good home, one that you feel really comfortable in. You know, it's okay to ask for references from a buyer too. And when you can find someone that you feel good about letting that horse go, it's can be the best for the person and for the horse.
Yeah. So that's a great, yeah, that's good to hear too. So, and just to help out, because I know a lot of people like that happens where it's like the horse is more athletic than the person, for example, or something like that, and it's just not a good fit, and they'd want to get the horse a new owner. What's a safe way of trying to do a transition, would you say, like, so they don't get lost in the jumble of the horses that, yeah, just get lost and, yeah, when they're sold?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think it's about being very honest about what the current horse's limitations are, any behavioral problems that they do have, any health problems that they do have. So being really honest and upfront with the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, again, taking the time to kind of vet the buyer as well. Ask for references from the buyer. Ask to see where is the horse going to be kept. Ask what the management is going to be of the horse. It's pretty common to ask for going a little further in the references, veterinary references, from the new buyer.
Yeah.
And that again, it comes back to the overarching topic of putting the horse first. When you are really upfront about all these things, it might mean that you're not going to get as high of a purchase price, if there are some things that are going on that you are upfront about, but in the long term, it's going to be better for the horse because the buyer is going to know as much as possible exactly what they're getting in that horse, what challenges they might have. So you're much more likely to find that really good fit with the new owner and the horse.
Right. And the industry is so small. So if they'll know, like, if you're honest, and they will probably recommend you to other people too. Like, hey, I had a great transaction with this person, and word gets around pretty quick too. So if you do things right, giving, you might get back. So things just happen that way. So.
Yeah. And from a professional level, I think that's really important. So even if if someone is looking to sell an individual horse and they go through a professional, trainer, for example, to help sell the horse, they can still be involved in the process, and they can still ask to have a chance to meet the new buyer. And again, it can just really help with that, even just the comfort level of knowing that it's going to be a good fit.
Yeah. So that's a good tip too. So that's good to hear from what you've seen in the past too, just how a good transition would go about. So yeah, good tips there. So I hear there's a free event you have going on.
Yes, yeah. So I have a mini course. It's Better Riding in 7 Days, and it's a series of short videos with little tips on everything from finding a better seat, the importance of breathing, to how to have more steady hands, really just simple things that you can do to actually make some pretty significant changes in riding skills. And that's totally free, just a short email course that I'll send you a video each day.
We'll have the link here for you all to see. So it'll be next to the video here. So that's awesome that you offer that. That's a really nice giveaway for people to just 7 days just to see the tips like that. That's going to be really educational for people. So that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of other resources on my main website as well, CRK Training. There's a lot of other free videos and resources from other instructors too.
Good. Yeah. So we'll have the link for the link. We'll have the link for your free gift, and then you can check out Callie on her website too. So this has been really educational. I think that we've touched some really good subjects here on the topic. Is there anything else that you want to mention for people just to keep in mind, just when they're out competing or working with their animal?
I think the biggest thing is actually what we had started with from your first question, of just always working on becoming more and more attuned to the horse, and just noticing those small changes. And they matter from a relationship level. They matter from even just a health and wellness level. If you can start to see some changes from the horse that can give you clues that they're not moving as well, maybe the saddle isn't as fitting as well as it used to, or something's going on nutritionally, they're developing gastric ulcers, there's so many things, but just that awareness of the the little subtleties that horses give us, that I think it's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway for sure. So, well, thank you so much, Callie, for joining us. Yeah, I know it's not always easy when we're all busy, and I know you're out working with horses even this morning. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on, and I hope that some of what we discussed is helpful to everyone.
I think it will be. So awesome. We'll talk soon. Thanks.
Okay.